NASCAR reveals the networks and start times for the 2023 schedule. Kyle Busch Motorsports signs a familiar veteran crew chief. And NASCAR says it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the Cup Series goes abroad. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. We've got lots of news to talk about today, but first I've got to talk about today's sponsor. Ronald McDonald House Charities of the Central Valley provide a home away from home for families with children in hospitals. They believe that when families are together, they cope better. No family should have to deal with their child's medical crisis alone. These families are charged nothing. They rely solely on donations from people like us. Right now, the Ronald McDonald House Central Valley chapter is selling tickets to 3 different raffles on their website. The first is for a 2022 Corvette Stingray, the second is for a 1958 Corvette, and the third is for a 1970 Chevelle. Click the top link down below to check out the page and donate. One ticket is just $5. It's all going towards a great cause and those prizes. And before I forget, when you click that link, be sure to use code GROOVY for double tickets with any $30 or more donation towards a single prize. For more information, disclaimers, head to the description down below. Thank you to Ronald McDonald House of the Central Valley for bringing this to my attention and for supporting a good cause. Yesterday, Kyle Busch Motorsports announced they've hired Brian Patty to crew chief the 51 truck next season. Brian Patty is a veteran Cup Series crew chief. He spent many years now with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He'll be leaving Stenhouse next year to go to KBM. KBM, of course, is now a Chevy team. The 51 truck is expected to be driven by Jack Wood, as well as Kyle Busch and some other drivers. This year, it was Marty Lindley crew chiefing the 51, and KBM confirmed in their release yesterday that the two have mutually agreed to part ways. This is an interesting hire, in my opinion. Brian Patty's not a nobody. KBM is making the change to Chevrolet. They've brought some new young drivers into the fold. Chase Purdy is going to drive the 4 full-time. Jack Wood is going to run probably close to half of the 51's races. You bring in someone like Brian Patty, who I know hasn't had a lot of success in recent years. He's been working with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He followed him from Roush actually over to JTG Doherty. But Brian Patty's been in this business for I don't know, at least 15 or so years. I remember he was Juan Pablo Montoya's crew chief. More notably, he was Boyer's crew chief for a few years there at Michael Waltrip Racing. I think from there he went straight to Roush with Stenhouse and then followed him over to JTG. So he's worked with a wide variety of race car drivers over several different eras. Most of that was Cup. Again, he's now moving to the Truck Series, but I think Brian Patty, with that experience, is a good choice for a team that's going to try and find its footing once again this year. You know, KBM has been a force in the Truck Series for, years. They expect to contend for championships. They expect to win multiple races every season. Not just Kyle Busch when he drives those trucks, but their other full-time drivers. They expect them to win. Next year's going to look a little different. I'm not saying KBM's going to struggle, but with Chase Purdy, Jack Wood, trying to feel out this new Chevrolet partnership, I'm not convinced KBM's going to dominate next year. Let me put it that way. But Brian Patty, someone with that kind of experience, does give you a better chance. Now, the rest of this episode is going to be dedicated to the NASCAR schedule, both present and future. Yesterday, NASCAR revealed the TV networks and start times for every NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series race next year. I'm mainly going to hit the highlights, but on the Cup Series side, there will be 21 races on broadcast networks, which means either Big Fox or Big NBC. 21 races will be the most since the 2009 season. These are races that you will not need a cable subscription to be able to watch, and that's more than half of the Cup Series schedule, so I think that's pretty cool news. The later start times, for the most part, are here to stay, but notably, my friend the Iceberg actually noted this on Twitter, several tracks that don't have lights, namely Dover, New Hampshire, Pocono, and Michigan, will see their races start 30 minutes to an hour earlier. A lot of 3 p.m. Eastern starts on the schedule next year, but those races will start somewhere between 2 and 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So it's a small change, but it could make a big difference if weather comes into play. Another note, there are only 2 Saturday night races on the schedule next season. The Daytona Summer Race, which still is your regular season finale, and the Bristol Night Race in the first round of the playoffs. There are several Sunday races that have been moved into the early evening. Notably, the Busch Clash will now start at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. As someone who was there last year during the daytime, it was really cool, but I think that event would truly benefit from the ambiance of a night race under the lights. So I'm glad they're making that change. Nashville Superspeedway is now committing to a night race. That race will start at 7 p.m. Eastern time. The Chicago Street Race, the very next week, will start at 5:30. And then Atlanta, the week after that, that's the second Atlanta race, will also be a 7 p.m. start. I haven't been to Atlanta Motor Speedway, but making that race, the July race, a night race, I'm sure will be welcomed by many fans who've attended in recent years. The North Wilkesboro All-Star Race will be on cable. That race will be broadcast on FS1, but if you don't have cable and you still want to see NASCAR stock cars race at North Wilkesboro, the truck race on Saturday will be on Fox. Thought that was kind of interesting. Glad the trucks are going to get that kind of spotlight at that racetrack. People will tune into the Cup race anyways, but I'm glad trucks hopefully can appeal to the largest possible audience. Those are many of the highlights. I really don't have any issues with this schedule. I know what NASCAR's limitations are. I know what the networks are looking for, what the sport is looking for, what fans are looking for, and considering all those sometimes conflicting ideas, I think the TV schedule we got here is a pretty good one. I don't have any major complaints. As we've discussed, NASCAR's going into next year trying to negotiate the next TV deal, with 21 races, most since 2009, being on broadcast network television. That will likely help provide a boost to the TV numbers, maybe somewhat artificial, somewhat misleading, but compared to recent years, I think this TV schedule will allow next year's ratings to see an increase, which I'm sure NASCAR loves, trying to land a bigger, a wealthier TV contract. We'll see exactly how it pans out, but let me know down in the comments below. Are there any start times there that stand out to you, that you're excited about, that you're frustrated by? I know the Martinsville night race was short-lived, but who knows? It may be back one day. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. I want to wrap this video up by discussing a report from reporter Adam Stern of Sports Business Journal. And it really ties into this whole schedule conversation. Here's what Stern tweeted. NASCAR holding a cup race outside the US is now a when, not if, situation. And the league is in active talks with a bunch of different venues, per Chad Siegler, NASCAR's VP of International Business. Siegler said there's no timeline yet, but he wouldn't rule out 2024. This is pretty exciting. NASCAR has been teasing the possibility of racing abroad over the last couple of years, but this is the closest report we've gotten to, I don't know, a confirmation that something is in fact in the works. Down in the comments below, I want you guys to leave your suggestions for racetracks or venues that NASCAR should explore in other countries. For me, if I'm keeping my expectations realistic, I feel like you gotta look first at Canada and Mexico. Keep it in North America. If you go to Canada, go back to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve up in Montreal. NASCAR's Canadian audience has been woefully underserved in recent years, really since the pandemic especially. I think it would be great to head north of the border sometime over the summer in the near future, race at that racetrack. There's other options out there. Some will say Canadian Tire, but I think Montreal would probably be my first pick, at least for a Cup race. I'm not saying we can't still go back to Canadian Tire with trucks or Xfinity, or maybe even Cup one day, but personally, I'd like to start with Montreal. If we're looking south of the border, NASCAR's raced at Mexico City before. The Xfinity Series raced there, like 15, 18 years ago? It was the mid-2000s, like 05, 06, maybe 07. I don't remember exactly when they stopped. Another racetrack that I believe could host a NASCAR Cup Series race. I think those are the two most realistic options as far as the near future is concerned, 2024, 2025, that sort of window. And I'd be a fan of either one of them. I'd love to see the Cup Series, the next gen car, Gen 7, race in Canada, race down in Mexico. Do both? I mean, I think the audience support would be there. I'm not 100% sure I'd commit to making them both annual races, but special events every couple of years, I'd say go for it. Those are probably the two most likely countries NASCAR would visit first outside the US. But I want to talk about the possibility of racing in Europe or in Asia. There are tons of fans in South America. The stadium concept debuted at the Clash last year, I think opened everyone's eyes to the possibility of racing in soccer stadiums, which exist worldwide. There's some big stadiums out there NASCAR could probably squeeze into. I love the idea of bringing the Cup Series overseas. Other sports are doing it. The NFL's playing games in London, Germany every year. It may be logistically very difficult, but it'd be cool. Would it not? People still talk about how awesome it was that NASCAR went and raced in Japan in the 90s. Who wouldn't want to try something like that again in the modern age? I would love to see the NASCAR Cup Series go worldwide, but there has to be a purpose beyond just, it would be cool, right? NASCAR Cup Series teams right now say they are not profitable. They are not making money. NASCAR would have to explain to the teams why traveling to Japan or Europe or South America for a week or more would actually earn them more money. International TV money? Regional sponsors signing big deals? Will that be enough to more than cover the travel and security costs? I don't know. I know there are a ton of fans in Europe, like I said, Asia, South America, all over the world. But NASCAR is still primarily a United States-based sport. And I guess I see what they're doing in Chicago next year for the street race. Adam Stearns reported they're spending $50 million, NASCAR is. And I just look at that and wonder, are there ways NASCAR can spend its resources more efficiently? I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but it feels kind of like NASCAR is trying to play catch up to Formula One. This feels kind of like when DC tried desperately to catch up to Marvel overnight. They saw the success of the Avengers and said, we need Justice League now. And audiences wound up seeing a bloated, kind of boring movie featuring main characters that we hadn't been introduced to yet. Marvel had spent years laying the groundwork. They had multiple Iron Man movies. They had Hulk, Thor, Captain America had their own films. DC hadn't made a Flash movie. They hadn't made a Cyborg movie. Aquaman hadn't come out yet. But they still said, let's go, time for Justice League. And it didn't really work, which is why the DC Cinematic Universe continues to reboot and rework itself every few years. NASCAR sees the success Formula One is having, obviously internationally, but now even in the United States, and they're trying to hastily copy certain elements of F1. F1 races on street courses, so let's add a street course next year. F1 races in other countries, let's go international. F1 has a successful docuseries, let's make our own and then release it on traditional cable television at 10 p.m. at night. There are certainly things NASCAR can learn from Formula One, don't get me wrong. But right now, NASCAR is missing the single key ingredient to building a successful product. Personality. Drivers need their own brand. Ross Chastain this year is probably the closest driver we've seen to successfully creating his own brand and his own buzz in recent years. We need more of that, but we also need to acknowledge that many active NASCAR drivers are kind of limited. A lot of them grew up in the southeastern United States. They're farmers. They like going fishing. That's great. You'll earn a ton of support from those regions of the United States specifically, but I'm not sure that's going to appeal in Europe. NASCAR spending all this money on the Chicago street race, which I hope will be a success. They spent, I don't know how much money, probably not a ton of money on the Race for the Championship docuseries, but I think it's safe to say that has not yet become a success. They might end up spending a ton of money racing internationally. That's all great. But are there ways we can spend that money more efficiently to build true, hardcore new NASCAR fans? We'll see what happens. I want to see NASCAR expand abroad. I'd love it, but the timing has to be right. I know that was a long tangent, but let me know down in the comments below. What are some countries you'd like to see the NASCAR Cup Series travel to? Any specific venues you'd like to see them race at? Let me know down in the comments below. That's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR almost every single day, even during the off season here on Out of the Groove. As always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. Your very generous support truly helps keep this show growing. I greatly appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you again very, very soon. Take it easy, y'all.